name's Ray. I'm a health and safety advisor for the City of Windsor. We're here to talk a little bit today about a respectful workplace program that we have here. Extremely important. It speaks to how we expect you to act while you're at the city, working with the city, and working with members of the public. Right? How does this program apply to agencies, boards, and commissions? It applies to all employees, right? Whether they're working with co-workers, members of the public, regardless, right? So that includes members of boards and agencies such as yourself. Why have a program like this? We want to provide a workplace that respects human rights, a workplace that's free from violence, discrimination, and harassment, right? The city, right, and for this to work, we have to get a top-down commitment, right, from our CAO right down, right? The city will not tolerate any act or failure to act that results in violence, harassment, discrimination, or a violation of human rights, right? And the policies, right, are living documents. We've worked with them and through the years. We had a workplace violence policy about 10 years ago, revised in 2010. And now the entire program consists of a conflict of interest policy, a professional dress guidelines policy for non-uniformed employees, standards of employee deportment, which strictly states this is how we expect you to act when you're representing the city, a workplace violence policy and procedure, and a workplace harassment policy and procedure. Conflict of interest is straightforward, right? If you have private interests or personal considerations that can affect somebody's judgment, whether it's purchasing, getting a contract, tenders, whatnot, and goes against the best interests of the city, right? You're in conflict of interest. Right? A conflict may occur when an interest benefits any member of the employee's family. The dress guidelines, I mean, they're outlined right there in the Guidelines Act. You know, no short shorts and no halter tops, that sort of thing. We want to dress professionally and look professional also, right? Again, unless you're uniformed. So our employees that work at Huron Lodge, they have scrubs, right? That's their uniform. Our mechanics have certain uniforms also, right? Employee deportment is huge. The city expects you to conduct yourself in a certain way, right? In a professional manner. It lists standards that are acceptable, and it lists what occurs if you breach those standards, right? And breaching them, depending on the seriousness of the breach, it could be held up to discipline, up to and including termination, right? So some of those breaches could be an unauthorized absence from work, incompetence in your duties, not working safely. The human rights policy, right? Again, we want to prevent harassment and discrimination, right? We're talking about discrimination on the grounds of a disability, your citizenship, family status, race, age, ancestry, color, religion, or sex. Workplace harassment is an ongoing systemic campaign of interpersonal destruction, right? It's an accumulation of incidences, right? They might start off minor and small, they might be joking, right? And then they accumulate and it turns into harassment, right? Added up, right? It constitutes a persistent abusive behavior that makes someone feel upset, right? Or humiliated or threatened. Harassment includes raising false concerns about or criticizing the work of others, right? Yelling and screaming, threats of job loss, insults, put-downs. Sometimes the use of sarcasm, people take it the wrong way, right? It's not communicated properly. It's impossible for the corporation to take a neutral position when it comes to this stuff, right? So as soon as it's brought to a supervisor's attention, we're obligated to act on it, right? And again, harassment, right? How does it impact people? You know, some people it's water off a duck's back and they just laugh and go on with it. Others, loss of motivation, loss of concentration, right? Self-confidence, dignity, self-esteem, morale. Now for our policies and procedures with respect to violence and harassment, for them to work, right, we have to make sure that they're in tune with the Occupational Health and Safety Act, right, the Human Rights Code, and the Canadian Criminal Code. We want to ensure the employees that the corporation is going to protect you from retaliation. Right? We're going to protect your privacy as best we can and maintain confidentiality also. Now, in putting these policies and procedures together, right, we had to give consideration to 4 different collective agreements throughout the city. Right? We have our indoor workers, outdoor workers, our firefighters, and our nurses. Violence and harassment, right? It can come from anyone in the workplace and be directed at anyone. Right? It could be subtle, overt, it could be deliberate. A lot of the things we see are unintended. I said that, but that's not what I meant. Right? Somebody misspoke. The communication wasn't relayed the way it should have been. Right? The most important thing is to be aware of your surroundings, right? And who could possibly overhear and be offended by what's being said. Right? So know your audience. Right? The test is, and this is right from Bill 168 in the Act, the test is whether a reasonable person knows or ought to know that the behavior would be considered unwelcome or inappropriate by the recipient. Some workplace violence statistics. Right? Workplace violence is the 2nd leading cause of death in the workplace and is the leading cause of death in the workplace for females. Right? Over 356,000 incidents of workplace violence are reported annually in Canadian workplaces. Right? If you stop and think about that, that's huge. Right? And those are just the incidents that are reported. Between 2001 and 2005, there were 69 work-related homicides in Canada. Right? An average of 14 victims killed a year, more than 1 a month. Right? While on the job. 71% of all incidents of workplace violence were physical assaults, compared to 57% of violent non-workplace accidents. The Occupational Health and Safety Act, again, Bill 168 came into play as a result of the inquest held from the tragedy that occurred at Hotel Dieu. Right? Created some legislation there. So it's been in part of the Occupational Health and Safety Act since 2010. And the Ontario Ministry of Labour says violence and harassment have no place in the workplace. Finally, through Bill 168, we have a definitive black and white definition of what workplace harassment is. It's engaging in a course of vexatious comment or conduct against a worker in a workplace that is known or ought reasonably to be known to be unwelcome. Right? You said something, you acted some way, somebody told you to stop, right? And you continued it. I don't care, right? Just the way I am. You keep, right? Becomes workplace harassment. Violence is more of a physical thing, right? It's a contact, right? Exercise of physical force against a person in the workplace that causes or could cause physical injury to a worker, an attempt to exercise physical force, right? Or even a behavior or a gesture, right? The 6'4" supervisor standing over the small worker and threatening them that way, right? Could be considered workplace violence. What we do at HR and out of health and safety is conduct risk assessments, right? We look at the environment, we look at the work, we break it down into steps and say, okay, how can we make this safer? Right? Sometimes it's simply, we can buddy you up with somebody. We install panic buttons, right, in desks or offices. We put up security glass. We have swipe card, restricted access to areas, things like that, right? So we assess the risk, right, and put things in place to try and keep our workers a bit safer. And as you can well imagine, certain occupations, it's greater potential for violence, right? Those dealing with angry clients and whatnot. Also, Bill 168 recognized the real possibility of domestic violence leaking into the workplace, right? Employers shall, meaning must, take reasonable precautions to protect workers where they're aware or ought reasonably to be aware that an act of domestic violence is likely to endanger a worker at a workplace. Right? And we've seen this. Newspapers, television, internet, right? 70% of individuals suffering from domestic violence are victimized at work. Right? The angry partner will show up, they'll yell, they'll scream, they could have weapons. Right? We've seen it happen before. Again, domestic violence can have a significant impact on workplace safety. Right? Again, the abuser seeks out the abused. and they're endangering not only the individual, but their co-workers also, right? Violent behavior imposes a duty on employers, being the corporation, and supervisors. What's really difficult is how much information can you share with the co-workers, right? You're going to tell them the whole story. You're going to say, you know, what exactly has occurred. I mean, there's confidentiality issues there also, right? So it's kind of a fine line to walk, right? The disclosure of such information is limited to that which is reasonably necessary to protect the other workers. Bill 168, right, also gave an extension to the 3 basic rights that we all have as workers, right? The right to know, the right to participate, and the right to refuse. Bill 168 says you also have a right to refuse work that you think might lead to violence. Some types of harassment, right? Sexual harassment, I think we all know what that is. It's a form of gender discrimination. Offensive, degrading, unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature, right, that leads to adverse job-related consequences. Personal harassment, they haven't really come up with a definition for bullying yet, but this is pretty close here. Unwanted, unwelcome acts of coercion, misuse of power or authority, right? Unwanted conduct, verbal comments, email threats, actions, gestures that affect a person's dignity and may result in a harmful workplace environment. You'll see here it does not include properly discharged supervisory duties, right? So if your supervisor gives you a job that you don't like, right, you can't say that he or she's harassing you just because they gave you some lousy work. Well, no, it's their duty. They have to assign work, right, that sort of thing. So properly discharged supervisory duties, not harassment. Non-verbal harassment, right, we've seen posters, pictures, emails sent. Verbal harassment, unwelcome remarks about a person's appearance, their personal life, right, name calling. The executive director of HR also carries the hat of workplace violence and harassment policy coordinator. Right, we do an investigation, we provide a report with recommendations, and we pass it on to her, right, and she decides what's going to happen, right? Is it going to be discipline? Is it going to be a termination? Is it going to be 2-week suspension, no pay, or whatnot? So what do you do if you're a victim of violence or harassment, right? If you feel comfortable enough, approach the person, ask them to stop. Like, I'm offended by that. You know, I'm very religious, and I'd rather not listen to you curse and swear and whatnot, right? If the person says, I'm really sorry, I didn't understand, it won't happen again, and it ends, good, right? We're done with it, right? If you're not comfortable approaching the person, you can go to your supervisor, ask them to speak to the individual. If the behavior continues, right, we can complete a formal complaint form. That gets the wheels turning up for the investigation, right? We speak to the person that put in the complaint. We speak to the individual who's the respondent. We get both sides of the story, right? We'll ask them for witnesses. Give us 3 people, 3 names that want to speak to us and tell us your side. Same with the other side. Ideally, right, we always offer the possibility of an informal resolution. Right? An informal resolution is getting the 2 parties in one room and saying, you know, let's talk about this, let's hash it out. Right? Before we move on to a full-blown investigation. Again, it could be a misunderstanding and miscommunication. I thought what you said was about me. No, it was about my brother-in-law. Oh, okay, that sort of thing. Right? So if we can get through an informal resolution, that's always best. If not, we do the investigation, provide the report to the Workplace Violence and Harassment Policy Coordinator. They meet with both parties, right, once they decide what's going to happen discipline-wise. And again, discipline could be a retraining, dismissal, whatnot. There's the informal resolution I just mentioned. Both parties have to agree, right, to get together and sit in the same room with a mediator. If one party says, no, I don't want to sit in the same room as that person, right, we move right on to a full-blown investigation. We also have to watch for retaliation, right, because that occurs also. right? This individual put a complaint in against me, right? And I'll say, you know, get rid of that complaint, or, you know, something's going to happen to your vehicle. We've had tires slashed and windshields smashed and threats in the parking lot and whatnot, right? To remove the complaint. Acts of retaliation will be treated as independent acts of workplace violence, and will be addressed here. Unfortunately, we do have malicious complaints, right, that we deal with now and then. Two individuals don't get along. I'm going to make this person's life miserable by making something up, right, and filing a complaint. To protect employees, right, we look at violence and harassment. The corporation, through our legal department, can obtain a restraining order against an individual. They can make changes to the work site. We can advise others about that individual. We can offer the services of our Employee Family Assistance Program, right? And they can talk through the situation with them. As an employee, right, we can do our part, maintain a respectful, inclusive workplace free of violence, harassment, or discrimination. Even if you see it occurring to somebody else and that other person is too shy, but they're really taking a beating, you can report that, right, to somebody else and say, look, it's happening to Ray and he's a nice guy and he's not going to say anything, right? You can get the ball rolling that way. As an employer, the City of Windsor, right in the Occupational Health and Safety Act, you have to take every precaution reasonable in the circumstance to protect the worker, maintain a violence and harassment-free workplace, right? Encourage employees to report this stuff. Don't take it, right? Don't, oh, he's just joking, right? But it happens again and again and again. So report to these things so we can respond to them. And I mentioned early on, we need that top-down commitment. I know our CAO is very strict about health and safety. When we see how important it is for her, it trickles down, right? Managers, supervisors, employees. We want to achieve a mutual, respectful workplace, right? Consideration for legislation, collective agreements, offer informal resolutions, maintain privacy, confidentiality, and deal with retaliation if it occurs. I'm assuming most of your meetings and whatnot will be in this building, right? So we're going to talk about the emergency evacuation plan for this building. What to do if something bizarre happens and you have to get out, right? We want to protect, right, the emergency preparedness plan. We want to protect property and the health and safety of the inhabitants of this 400 building, right? A big part of management responsibilities and duties is a belief in crisis management, right? Everybody has to have a job to do. Everybody has to know where to go and what to do and how to do it. The chief building authority for this building is the gentleman that runs our security downstairs at the front desk, right? He's going to run the show if there's an emergency, right? So the CBA, the chief building authority, is going to gather his emergency evacuation team and say, okay, here's what's going on. This is what we have to do. We have to have a contact list. How do we get a hold of these people day and night? Home numbers, work numbers, cell numbers, and whatnot. And we're talking about emergencies. We're not just talking about fire, right? Any one of these things could happen. Because the general public come into this building also, right? We have driver's license and whatnot here. An emergency could include a fire, right? We could have a medical emergency, which we've had in the past. Bomb threats. Unfortunately, we do have those. Earthquake or tornado, chemical spill, not a high percentage of that possibility occurring here. An occupation, right, where people take over the building and they're protesting. Hostage taking, armed robbery, power water failure, an explosion, or suspicious mail. Again, we have to be able to put together our emergency evacuation team, right, at the drop of a hat, contact them. If they're not available, we have to have alternates lined up. This person's out of the country, on vacation, they're ill, right? We move on to the next person. And of course, that list has to be updated, right? People retire, people leave, got to have an updated plan there. The emergency evacuation team, again, they all have roles. We got to do drills, we got to do some training, right? But that chief building authority, right? He dictates what's happening from the word go. And of course, when a situation arises, right, what's a good government without some paperwork? Right, so we got to put logs together and status reports and post-emergency reports. Right, how did things happen? How did they unfold? How did my team react? Right, and we get copies out to the necessary individuals. There's a chief building emergency warden also, kind of the second in command. They're going to help put the reports together. And of course, there's a post-emergency report. Okay, nobody died, everything went well, it was nice and smooth. Right, we finalize that, then we get copies out to the CAO, the General Manager of Social and Health Services, Executive Director of Human Resources, and the Joint Health and Safety Committee co-chairs for this building. If there is a critical incident and somebody's stressed by that, again, we have a critical incident disability officer, right, that will offer them employee assistance. We have a crisis control center, so if we evacuate the building and it's storming and the weather's terrible outside, we have a place to go. Or if there's a hostage taking and it's not going to be rectified in half an hour, right, we can go to another area. That crisis control center used to be Windsor Arena, and they're in the process of finding a new place because whatever is identified as the crisis control center, it's got to be like a little command post. You need computers, telephones, fax machines, communication equipment, that sort of thing. Right, and there we are there. Access to first aid supplies, a power generator. So this building, 5-story structure, 2 sub-level parking areas, poured reinforced concrete, steel framing, right, standard building stuff. There it is there. Granite, stone, metal cladding, carpet, concrete block, all that good stuff. Underground, parking level 1, right, we got our electrical disconnect down there, sprinkler control, fuel storage. At the core of this building, right, 3 elevator shafts, 2 stairwells, electrical room, male and female washing facilities throughout, and janitor closets throughout also. Standard fire alarm, located within the vestibule at the Midwest building entrance. With the fire alarm, right, there's heat detectors, smoke detectors, those manual pull stations, sprinkler system you can see up above. Exit locations are well marked, right? If we have an emergency, right there, straight across the hall, exit, 4th floor, down the stairs, into the lobby, and out to 2 collection points. I'll talk about those in a minute. Fire department access, west side of McDougall Street. We have portable ABC fire extinguishers everywhere. We offer all our employees fire extinguisher training, right? I mean, it's not rocket science, but when you're nervous and scared, pulling the pin and squeezing it and using it properly. Our electrical disconnect, we have a maintenance captain who does our plumbing and electricity and whatnot. They'll deal with the electrical aspect. The elevators are equipped with service keys that hold them on the 1st floor during an emergency. And again, our automatic sprinkler systems you can see above. We have a wet standpipe system. Emergency generator up on the 5th floor, the penthouse. The generator is going to give us enough light for 30 minutes, give us time to get out of the building. This is the big thing here, right? Once you get down to the lobby and you leave the building, here are the 2 collection points. One is at City Hall at the Cenotaph. The other is at the corner of McDougall and University Avenue. Right? You'll be directed there by people in the lobby, right? They'll tell you where to go. If it happens that you're here after hours and you've got to go to one of the collection points, make sure you go there because somebody has to go there and account for you and say, look, we had 8 people in the meeting and there's only 7 people here. Right? All of a sudden we have emergency personnel arrive and they say, we're missing a person. Right? Are they unconscious? Did they fall in the stairwell? Are they injured? Well, no, they went to Tim Hortons for coffee because they thought it was a drill. Right? So get to those collection points. Wait to be accounted for by your supervisor. Right, so the emergency evacuation team, again, we want to protect life, health, property. The whole team's got to work together. Again, they have to drill these things. They're going to be wearing these cute little lime-colored vests, City Windsor crest on them. The emergency evacuation team, right, this is how it works. We have our chief building authority. And his next in command is the emergency warden or chief. right? Fire emergency officer, we have floor captains, right, for every floor. We have parking garage captains for the 2 levels downstairs. We have floor monitors, and we do have some mobility impaired individuals that work in this building. So we have mobility impaired captains, right, who meet those individuals in front of the elevators in the vestibule, right, and provide them assistance getting out of the building. Again, the CBA runs the show if there's an emergency. He or she has to make sure the fire plan's up to date, everything that we're doing is up to the building code, right, control fire hazards, make sure the building's kept in good condition, right, make sure our tests are done on our fire extinguishers and our alarm system and our sprinkler system at the appropriate times. If there's an emergency, depending on the type of emergency, do we contact EMS, do we contact fire, do we contact the bomb squad, do we contact police? Right, so again, that alarm goes off, right, get to the lobby, hit the east or west entrance or exit, I guess it would be, and wait until you hear the all clear before you're allowed back in the building. And post-emergency, the chief building authorities, again, going to put some paperwork together, say what did we do right, what did we do wrong. Last time we had a drill, the communication system didn't work, the walkie-talkies didn't work. Okay, well that's why we have drills, right, to figure this stuff out before the big show happens, right? The right-hand man, chief building emergency warden, does some of the administrative work, they recruit personnel, they help in the training of the team, they appoint floor monitors and alternates, right? You need somebody to be there in case, again, they're on vacation or whatnot. Immediately report all incidents of fire or other evacuations to the chief building authority, right? The emergency wardens have to be familiar with the act, familiar with the buildings. They have to have regular meetings, keep everybody on top of things. So if there's an emergency, the CBA, Chief Building Authority, has full authority, they're running the show until the emergency personnel get here. So the Chief Building Authority is going to direct things, he's going to be the quarterback, say this has to be done. And then when fire shows up, they take over, right? Or police, or EMS, or whoever it is. Right? Once fire and rescue services are on the scene, they assume full authority and responsibility. Fire alarm goes, again, closest exit, hit the stairs, right? Down you go. There'll be somebody down there directing you again out the doors. The floor captains will work with the floor monitors and clear the floors. Make sure nobody's hiding in a closet or under a desk or stuck in a washroom or a stairwell, right? And I'll go floor by floor, right? And make sure everybody's evacuated the building. The main entrance captain is going to be downstairs in the lobby, right? And again, they're going to tell you where to go, where to congregate, where the evacuation points are. In the parking garage, if you're pulling in with your vehicle, and you're mid-motion, the alarm goes off, go down and park at your spot. If you're just starting it up and ready to leave, the alarm goes off, don't leave and go up the ramp, right? Get out of your vehicle and exit the parking garage. Again, the floor captains have to get everybody out. Again, not just employees, but general public that's in the building also. And again, stairways and hallways are clear. Nobody's stuck or trapped anywhere. Nobody's injured. The floor captains have to make sure we don't get any combustible materials that accumulate, right? Make sure our exit lights are working well, the doors are working, and keep a copy of the emergency contact list and emergency evacuation plan. The fire doors, if they're wedged open, that's not good. They all have self-closing devices, right? The exit lights are out, that's not going to help either, right? Our fire extinguishers are charged. Everybody's informed who the mobility impaired individuals are, right? So again, they have to stay on top of that. We're going to close the doors to the room or space where the fire or smoke is discovered, right? There's 45-minute fire-rated doors throughout the building, right? It's going to give us time to get out and assist any team members you see that may need assistance. Once all areas have been evacuated, close the door between your work area, the central hallway, leave with your manager, right? You're going to be one of the last people out of the building. Under no circumstances, right, should anyone return unless they're authorized to do so. I forgot my coat, I forgot my car keys, I forgot my wallet, my purse, right? You're not going to go back in that building, right? Once you're out, and you stay there, again, until you get the all clear. Again, when Fire and Emergency Services or the Chief Building Authority gives that all clear signal, that's when we go back inside. The floor monitors, again, sweep their floors, make sure everybody's out. Mobility impaired captains, some of the mobility impaired are in wheelchairs, and they have oxygen tanks, right? Do we wait for fire to come up and help us, or do we recruit some of our other floor monitors and help carry the individual down, right? Again, it depends on the emergency. There's a communications captain also. They're like a runner, right? They take direction from the fire chief, chief building emergency warden, look to outside agencies for communication requirements, liaise with our tech department, right, regarding computer communications and whatnot, get the information out there. The mobility impaired persons captain, right, we have them meet the mobility impaired person so they have a bit of a rapport, right, discuss, okay, if this happens, this is what I want you to do, and this is what we're going to do together, right, so it's not a last minute thing, we do mock drills, right, so we're good to go. If a guide dog is required, right, we're going to involve it in the drills and rehearsals also, right, because that's real life. They're going to go to the assembly point in front of the elevators, wait for their floor captain, wait for the mobility impaired person to help them out. The maintenance inspection captain, again, that's our nuts and bolts guy. They've got schematics, they've got plans, they do all the electricity, the plumbing, the heat, the hydro, the water, right? We want them involved also, right? They're going to provide necessary information to fire, EMS, police, and whatnot. Of course, we're going to notify fire and say, listen, we're having a drill, right? So there's no panic there. They're expecting it. They show up anyway, but they don't really get out of the truck. And again, if somebody's traumatized or stressed because even just a drill, right, we offer them family assistance. General evac procedures, again, stairwells, lobby, evacuation points. Anyone who detects fire, pull the alarm, right? Don't try and see, is it big, is it small, I'm going to fight it. Pull the alarm first. Then if you see that it's small and you can contain it, grab a fire extinguisher and do your thing. Again, stairwell, lobby, out you go, both evacuation points. I mentioned earlier, if you're in the parking garage when the alarm sounds, right, drive your vehicle to the closest parking spot, park it there, don't try and exit the garage, right? Once you're out of your vehicle, right, hit the exits and go to one of the collection points again. Regular hours for the building are 8:30 to 4:30, right? Evacuation team members aren't going to be living here, right? They may have to come in from home or whatnot. There should be management, supervisors on hand to help you evacuate the building. Again, if you're inside the building, outside of business hours, right, again, stairs, lobby, collection points. If there's a labor action, right, supervisor, manager, staff member shall assume full responsibility for ensuring that they're working to evacuate the individuals. Again, mobility impaired persons, we have to get them out. Medical emergencies, call 911. Inside, you have to dial 9 first, so it's 911. Right, then notify your supervisor. We have someone, I think, suspected heart attack or a blood sugar thing or a broken leg in the stairwell. Right, they're going to contact Windsor Emergency Services. Supervisors and managers go down and wait for EMS to arrive. 2 certified first aiders will be called. They're going to stay with the individual depending on the medical. Again, supervisors and managers meet the ambulance, escort the attendants up if there's a bomb threat. The Chief Building Authority, after discussion with the emergency warden, Windsor Fire and Rescue, Windsor Police, may order the evacuation of the building in the event the bomb threat's received or explosive object is located. Right? And you can get these bomb threats a couple of different ways: telephone, letter, card, note. It'll be up to the Chief Building Authority to decide whether they're going to evac the building or not. We have a bomb search team, and they go from area to area and look for all the little cubby holes where somebody could put a bomb. And if they find nothing, which generally they do, that's the end of it. Right? Because in today's society, we've seen this, Individuals love to have that power, right? And they pull up the cell phone and say, yeah, I planted a bomb at City Hall Square. And then they love watching all the people walk out of the building, right, and wait and wait and wait till it's all searched. And then they're going to wait till everybody gets back in and starts work again and pick up the phone and go, hey, there's a bomb threat, right? So I mean, that's the reasoning behind not automatically evacuating the building. If you get any reports or threats of bombs, notify your supervisor, chief building authority. You know, the chief building authority, again, is going to put together the bomb search team. And again, floor by floor, they're going to look in places outside, right? Piles of leaves, refuse, shrubbery, any little cubby hole hiding spot. Inside, we're going to get the maintenance captain. And he's going to look in the air conditioning, storage areas, fan rooms, and whatnot. If a suspicious object is found, don't touch it, right? Let the CBA know where it is. And standard evac procedures, right? If they say, yeah, okay, we have something, we gotta get out, right? Follow the evacuation procedures until we're given the all clear. So we're gonna notify the chief building authority, the warden, the CAO, executive director of HR, general manager of social and health services. Our employees here have a bomb threat checklist beside the phone. If they're the ones that get the call, right, here's the information they hope they can get from the caller. Right, what time is it? Do they sound inebriated? Do you have an accent? You know, try and keep talking, that sort of thing. Here's the fun stuff, earthquake and tornadoes, right? We all know these things can pop up. I mean, it's like a loud train, they say, coming through. You might not get very much advanced warning. Right? If there's an earthquake, I mean, it's easy to say stay calm, but right, the building's shaking. Find cover under a desk, in a doorway. Try and stay away from glass areas, under lights, that sort of thing. Anything that could fall, shatter, or blow in. If a fire occurs during this, pull the nearest fire alarm. Right? And remember, there could be aftershocks also. Don't use the elevators, they're going to be locked out. Do not re-enter the damaged buildings, right, until you get that all clear. Tornadoes, right, they usually touch down for less than 20 minutes. Same thing, seek shelter in those areas. Staff may be directed to evacuate the building when the tornado's passed, right? It may have caused damage to the building, and we want to get people away from the building as far as possible. And it's standard evacuation, right? Stairs, lobby, collection points. If we have a chemical spill, that's why we have material safety data sheets. That's why we train individuals on WHMIS. Doesn't happen a lot in this type of building. But you're going to look for the material safety data sheet. What do we have to do? Bring the person, give them some ventilation, give them water, milk, make them vomit. What has to be done, right? And of course, we're going to get emergency personnel in here, medical and whatnot. Occupation, right? People are protesting things. It's just keeping our people away from those areas, right? We're going to let the police know. They usually show up, surround the individuals. If they're not causing any harm, they let them do their thing. Hostage taking, thank goodness we don't have this hardly at all. Upon discovering a hostage taking incident, the supervisor will call 911, good idea. Notify the chief building authority, people up the food chain, let them know. Do not intervene with the hostage taking. Oh, I saw an episode of CSI last night, I know how to do this. We don't want to see that. If you're taken hostage, it's easy to say, but remain as calm and passive as possible. Speak only when spoken to. Don't volunteer suggestions or that sort of thing. If there's more than one hostage taker, don't take sides. Right? Stay as far away from them as possible. Right? Don't call them by their first name. Don't be their best friend. Don't admit to knowing any police officers that may be containing the area. Armed robbery, again, easier said than done. Don't panic. Right? Pay attention. Try and stay calm. Give them what they want, and try and remember as many features, right, as possible. Activate the panic button once it's safe to do so. Supervisor, know, yeah, I just got robbed. Call the police. Write down as many details as you can while your memory's fresh. Power failure, we're going to look to the maintenance captain to say it's only going to be a minute or two or half an hour. We'll get the water back, electricity back, heat back. If there's an explosion, right, we're going to hit the nearest fire alarm, fall to the floor, protect ourselves, right? And once we see the emergency evacuation team out there. They're going to direct us out of the building. Suspicious mail, we do get that now and then, you know, the white powder on the package sort of thing. You don't know what it is, you don't want to take a chance. We can get them through our regular Canada Post, we can get them through interdepartmental mail, a courier package, vendor delivery, personal delivery. What are you looking for on these packages, right? It's got a ton of stamps or tape, right? A little dodgy looking. No return address, writing's poor, type's poor. Here's a big one, right? Check for protruding wires. You know, if it's not balanced right, if it's greasy and wet and that sort of thing. If you think you've got a suspicious package, right, don't handle it. Let your supervisor know. We're going to get the bomb squad in. They'll take care of it. We may have to evacuate the building. It depends, right? Don't touch the package, right? Don't eat or drink anything. Keep your wash your hands in soap and water. Shower as soon as you can. Seek immediate medical attention. We do have defibrillators in the building. I don't know if you've seen these things lately, but they almost talk to you. You almost don't need training to work these things, right? You pull them off the wall, you open it up, it says, "Hi, how are you? Are we having a nice day?" And it tells you where to put all the bits and pieces, what to do, what button to push. I mean, the things are amazing. Panic alarm, we do have that in our social services buildings, right? They know when to use them, how to use them, why they're going to use them. I don't know if you've noticed the emergency blue lights, right? We have 9 of them in and around 400 City Hall Square. If you or another staff member experience a real or suspected medical emergency, a bad trip and fall, vehicle or pedestrian accident, vehicle or building fire, physical assault, verbal assault, hit the red button on these units. The alarm goes off, the light flashes, we'll see in a minute. They're located parking level 1, parking level 2, and parking lot 38. Again, easy peasy, hit the red button. If you can stay there, right, till somebody sees you. Every one of these emergency blue lights has a camera on them. So as soon as you hit the button, security zones in on there, and they hustle to get over there to help you. If possible, stay there, right? If you're being threatened, obviously you're going to get the heck out of there. And that's what they look like there, right? Hit the red button. If there's no threat, wait for security to arrive. If a threat exists, move to a secure area. Thank you very much.
Now you've had your health and safety portion of this. You won't have to have it again for 4 years if you come back, so that's it. So hopefully, you know, it was a little bit beneficial. I know a lot of it talks about corporation and employees and that, but as advisory members of committees, it is important that if you are having issues on the committee, that you do let Karen Kaddour know, talk to Karen Kaddour, and we can work with you in terms of what you need to do. But again, your safety and you know, respectful workplace is also for our advisory committee members as well. Okay. Well, right now I'd like to say welcome and congratulations on your appointment to the advisory committee for the term of 2014-2018 term of council. At this point, there are 6 pillars for the current term of council. Right now, this is from our last term of council with Mayor Francis. At this point, Mayor Dilkins at this point is going to be planning strategic planning sessions with the new term of council, and they will determine what their pillars are going to be for this following term. But at this point right now, we have jobs and economic diversification, regional cooperation, cultural capital, corporate opportunities, downtown revitalization, and an affordable and an attractive city. So now here's the role of the advisory committee. It's to provide public input to council members on emerging issues, consider issues, and to provide advice. They are not to deliver services or perform any operational functions, but you are here to provide advice so that your council can make the right decisions in terms of what the community wants. You report to your respective standing committee, and meetings are generally held on a quarterly basis. Now, there are some members in here who sit on our Planning, Heritage, Economic and Development Standing Committee. They're members at large, so they meet monthly. Our standing committee structure was adopted in May 2011. And basically, our governance review is done. And they came in and decided that we were having just meetings, too many council meetings, but not enough where there was actual public input, and that the council meetings would usually be long, and delegates would come to speak at the council meeting, and then there would items would be deferred because there wasn't any public input, there wasn't enough public input. So they decided a standing committee structure. So now our council meets every first and third Monday of the month. They're actually meeting tonight, and our standing committees meet on a week. Each standing committee meets once a month. Sorry. So we have our executive committee, which is all of council. We have our planning, heritage, economic development, and standing committee, which is our planning. We have 3 citizens at large that sit on our planning portion of the meeting. And then our heritage portion, we have 5 members at large that sit on the committee. That's the only standing committee that actually has members at large. Council decided that for planning matters, they needed more community input along with heritage matters. The Environment and Transportation Standing Committee, and then our last one is our Social Development, Health and Culture Standing Committee. The Executive Committee, which is all of council, meets at 6 o'clock on Monday nights, on the last Monday of the month. For planning, it's usually the second Monday of the month, and that starts at 4:30. Our environment is starts at 4:30 as well, and it's usually the third Wednesday of the month. And our social is the only one that meets in the morning at 9 a.m., and that's usually the second Wednesday of the month. So as an advisory committee member, your reports, you have your meetings, and you may form a committee report where you want it to go to council for a decision. So it would flow through the advisory committee, would go to a standing committee. Karen, your committee coordinator, would prepare a committee report showing who moved and seconded the motion, and it would move up to the standing committee. At the standing committee level, your motion would be reviewed by the standing committee, which is 5 councillors, and then that would after that they would either adopt the committee report, or they would amend the committee report or ask for further information from the advisory committee, and if it's adopted, it goes to council at the next step. So procedure for every advisory committee of council, it's governed by the city's procedural bylaw. So exactly what we use for our council meetings, that's what you use for our advisory committee meetings. So we have for your first meeting, you're going to elect the chair of your committee. And what's going to happen is you're going to get the chair will receive a governing mandate letter outlining what the mandate of your committee is, exactly what your committee's role is, what you can discuss, what issues you can discuss, and issues that it must be in your mandate in order for the committee to actually talk about the issue or recommend things to council. You'll also have most committees have an annual budget. There's also a code of conduct, which you've all read, I'm sure, your code of conduct, and that's the statement of declaration that you've signed tonight, stating that you read your code of conduct. And meeting procedure. Basically, our procedural bylaw is based on the Municipal Act in terms of the clerk, basically procedures to a meeting, and we follow the Burnell's Rules of Order. There's also the Robert's Rules of Order, but we follow the Burnell's Rules of Order. So the Municipal Act in 2001 is the main structure governing the creation of administration and the government and municipalities in the Canadian province of Ontario. It recognizes municipalities as responsible and accountable levels of government and provides for the establishment of an integrity officer functions at the local level. Local councils are now better able to determine the appropriate mechanisms for delivering municipal services to their community. So you guys have a very important role as members, as an advisory member to a committee, as you can shape your community and council and making them, and to providing them with input in order for them to make the right decisions. Our overview of government and municipal environment. We have here what makes an efficient meeting. Karen has, how long have you done committees, Karen? For 15 years in terms of, so she's come up with ideas on what would make an efficient meeting. As in order, you'll usually only have a 2-hour time frame, so you want to keep things on schedule. You don't want to go off topic. You want to go through the agenda and make sure that you can get through all the items that are important to your committee or to you as members of the committee. So an openness to debate and to others' points of view. So many people that sit on committees, you may have different views, different opinions, but let everybody speak and provide their opinion or what they think. Respect the right of others to disagree. Adherence to the procedural bylaw, ensuring that meetings are conducted in a manner sensitive to the opinions of others. And again, at council, we're strict in terms of the procedural bylaw. We do give a little bit of leeway, but we like the chair to conduct himself per the procedural bylaw. A relaxed approach to the rules of discussion, as I said, it's a little more relaxed at the advisory level. Members have the right to an agenda and to have that agenda followed. So you all will receive an agenda every meeting that you have. When Karen schedules your meeting, you will receive an agenda, and we'd like to stick to the agenda. Members arrive at the meeting, and make sure that you arrive at the meeting on time and are prepared. You've read the agenda and ready to participate in the debate. And complete your assignments as you've promised to complete. So if there's follow-up that you're to provide some information at the next meeting, make sure that you've done that. Now, what makes an unproductive meeting? In the past, there have been times where people have become argumentative or interrupt often and don't listen to what others are saying. That unfortunately, doesn't become a very productive meeting. And there usually is no final decision because they can't come to a common ground. Meetings at that point tend to run later. We like to stick to a 2-hour time frame because most meetings are after hours, and so we'd like to stick to our 2-hour time frame. No meaningful and sustainable closure is achieved on issues, especially contentious issues. There are some issues, and I know in some of the committees where they do become contentious, and they follow to the standing committee and on to council. So if we can come to some type of resolution on the issue or some type of agreement, and you can agree to disagree, but vote yay or nay and move on with the issue. Members veer from topics and resulting in meaningless discussions outside the current mandate. So we like to keep on topic, following the agenda, as I've stated. As long as we're following the agenda and the topic, we don't have an issue. You can discuss the topic, or sometimes there may be delegates there who'd like to speak or address the committee. That's not an issue, but try to stay on topic. And make sure you respect others' opinions and their points of views. Now, as I said, your first meeting of your committee, if you haven't had a meeting, you're going to be picking a chair. And the role of the chair, so if any of you are interested in becoming chair, so you protect the rights of those attending the meeting, ensure the members maintain decorum in remarks and actions, ensuring that the agenda is followed and that the meeting progresses with due efficiency. Treat all members and others in attendance with respect and courtesy. Sometimes you do have other members of the public at your meetings. You also have other members of administration that attend meetings who may need to answer questions depending on the issue. Recognizing members to speak when appropriate and maintaining recognized neutrality when assigning the floor, answering questions and offering information. So the chair basically controls how the meeting progresses, and making sure that one speaker at a time and that they brought their point out and clarified and asked any questions. And if the chair wishes to make a motion to speak on the debate, he has to leave his chair. Somebody else can chair while he makes his motion. And the agenda. The chair also provides and sets up the agenda for the meeting, and the chair. So the committee, he provides the agenda or the items that he'd like on the agenda or she'd like on the agenda a minimum of a week before the meeting. For our notice provisions, we like to normally have our meetings agendas posted a week prior to the advisory committee meeting, and for our standing committee meetings, they're usually 10 days before the meeting that we post the agenda. So an agenda is essential, and it provides a guideline or plan to ensure an efficient meeting. Items discussed should fall within the purview of the mandate and the intent of providing a productive meeting for all those in attendance. So a chair may have, there may be dollars that need to be spent from the budget. And he may have a report that's going to be coming forward for a request for dollars. What he should do or she should do is provide a actual, maybe for the committee members, where there's actual quotes or this is how much it's going to cost, this is what we need in order to do this. So have something there so that the committee members are able to make an informed decision instead of having to come back later or just make yes, we'll spend money on this without actually knowing how much, what you're going to be spending the money on, how beneficial is it going to be to the committee by doing this, and to council when they make their decision on it. And disclosures and conflict of interest. So during a meeting, the chair, that's at the beginning of the meeting, will ask if there are any disclosures of conflict of interest. So if it's an item where it's a report that maybe you have some type of investment in it, or you know of the person that's asking for the money, or it's a relative, or you would declare a conflict. It's up to you to declare the conflict. The clerk's office will not say that you should declare a conflict on it. You should know whether or not you should be voting on the matter that's being discussed. And at that point, you would just abstain. You could leave the meeting or just abstain from vote and not vote on the item.
Do you have a list of
At council, normally what happens is the member will leave the meeting or sit in the gallery. For the advisory, you're normally sitting around the table. If you just sit to the side, like so that you're not at the table, then you can do that, or you can leave the meeting until the item is discussed. So the terms of reference and mandate, at this point, your first task is going to be to review your advisory committee's mandate. Some of them haven't been reviewed in years, and others are, need to be updated. We've actually, they're all standardized now. They all look the same for every committee, but what the meat of it in the mandate, you're going to review and look at and discuss as a committee. So that will be one of your first items on your agenda, mandates. And those mandates, prior to them they need to be adopted by council. So you will review, you will recommend changes. It'll go to the standing committee. The standing committee will review it. If they approve your recommended changes, it goes on to council for their final adoption of it. And what is a quorum? Well, a quorum is defined representation of members required to conduct business legally. The purpose of defining a quorum is to avoid making decision with an unrepresentative group of members. So a quorum consists of 50 plus 1, i.e. if there are 10 members on a committee, the quorum required to conduct a meeting would be 6. So it's very important when you do receive your date of your meeting and your agenda that if you're not able to attend the meeting, that you contact the committee coordinator, Karen, to let her know that you're not going to be there, to ensure quorum. Because if there aren't enough members, we will cancel the meeting and reschedule. So we need to ensure quorum. So here is some housekeeping items. So your attendance at meetings are essential. You are, again, you've given a role now as an advisory committee member, and you do have a role to provide input. And to provide input to council into what your community or what you think your community needs. And I'm sure that you've picked committees that you're interested in terms of what your passion is, so which is great. It does give council an idea of what the community out there would like. If you can't attend a meeting, like I said, please email your regrets to the committee coordinator prior to the day of the meeting. If you no longer wish to be on the committee as a member due to unforeseen circumstances, please send an email to the committee coordinator so that we can also take the request to striking committee where council can appoint a new member or again, search for other members. If you move or your contact information changes, please make sure that you do provide that information to Karen, because that's where we're sending your agendas, whether it's email or mailing, or if we need to get a hold of you, a phone number, like if anything changes, please let Karen know. What is a meeting motion? A meeting motion is a statement made by a member during a meeting describing what he has done and how it is to be accomplished. So motion is basically the action. So you'll have a mover and a seconder. So if there's a report that you're reviewing and you'd like to move the recommendation in the report, you need a mover and a seconder, and then there's a vote taken. Yeah, you have to have quorum in order to be able to. What happens usually, if Karen does come to a meeting and there is no quorum, you usually wait how long, Karen? About half an hour, and at that point. Now, if for some reason the members want to stay and discuss, it's not a meeting, and Karen doesn't stay and take minutes, but if you'd like to stay and discuss things, but no motions can be passed at that point. Okay. And so the motion is then seconded by another member who states, I second the motion. After discussion, the meeting by a majority accepts the motion. Only one motion can be considered at a time. As I talked about your annual operating budget of an advisory committee. What happened for the last term of the advisory committee prior to you being appointed, they submitted a budget to council outlining what they thought that they would need money for the 2014 to 2018 year. What Karen's going to do is attach that budget to your next agenda, and you will review how much your budget amount and what was determined that you would be doing with the money. At that point, you may want to change. The amount won't change, but what you're doing with the money, you may change. It all depends, and there may need to be a committee report. It depends on what you're going to be changing. So every year you prepare your annual budget and you outline the amount and what you're going to be spending the dollars on. City Council approves your budget amount. Any additional dollars after, let's say you have a $4,600 budget. If you need extra funds, it has to go to council in order to request those extra funds. Also, as an advisory committee, you have to do an annual report to council. And what happens is each advisor, you prepare an annual report outlining what you've done in the year for your committee, how many meetings you've had, what motions you've passed, types of things that you've done on the committee as a group. The chair usually drives that annual report, and as the committee, you can provide, as a committee member, you can provide input. It's a good time for the committee to actually highlight, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we've done. These are, all the different things, whether you're on the seniors or WECAC or diversity. You also state how many meetings you've had and all the initiatives you had, and it kind of gives council an overview of everything, how valuable the committee is as well, right? And okay, this committee is needed, it's very active. Because from time to time we do review our committees, and it's based on, has there been attendance? Have we had quorum? Have we had, the maximum amount of meetings that are required, for the committee? So all of that, basically, council then makes decisions on okay, is this committee a valuable committee, or is it something that really there's not much interest in? Right now, I think the committees we have are all very active and, you know, are needed, and council recognizes that. And that pretty much is the advisory part of the training session.